Hey ladies, welcome back to the show. We got a great Q&A podcast for you today. Some awesome questions were sent in. We've got one about carb tolerance testing and weight loss, diet variation, metabolic flexibility, and recovering from a low carb weight loss plateau. And we have a great question on thyroid and adrenal insufficiency, specifically about the safety and efficacy of adrenal cortex supplements. Now, before we get started, I'm going to read the latest review on iTunes. Now, if you would like to leave a review and rating, you can head over to either you can just go into your iTunes podcast and leave the review there. If you're not sure how to do that, you can go over to KarenMartel.com/podcast, and that it will give you explicit directions on how to do it. Each month, we're going to choose one of our reviews and ratings, and they will win a prize. This month's prize is a little gift package of Primal Kitchen Paleo Keto protein bars. So if you would like to be entered in and have a chance to win those, all you got to do is leave a stellar review and rating, and I will be sure to enter you into this contest. So today's is by Louise San Rafael. Karen Martel is a hidden jewel. Finding someone like Karen who understands weight loss resistance is like a miracle. So few people know about it, much less understand it. She's such a pleasure to work with, so kind, understanding, and knowledgeable. And she's conscious of costs, unlike so many male practitioners. And her podcasts are so helpful and so interesting. So thank you, Louise. And sorry to hear that you had maybe some bad experiences with male practitioners. I'm sure there's women practitioners out there too that are not conscious of costs as well. So yes, if you would like to leave me a review, I sure appreciate it. It helps to grow this podcast and reach more people. So you can do that on your iTunes podcast or on your computer. Okay, let's get to today's Q&A. You're listening to The Other Side of Weight Loss. I'm your host, Karen Martel, transformational nutrition coach and expert in women's weight loss and hormone health. If you are ready to go beyond diet and exercise, then tune in each week to hear from leading experts in psychology, nutrition, and spirituality as we explore the many avenues of what it really takes to lose weight and feel your best. All right, welcome to today's Q&A. So we're going to be doing Q&As once a month now. So if you have a question you would like me to answer, you can head over to KarenMartel.com/podcast and fill out the Q&A form to have your questions answered. So today we've got one from JJ. Hi, Karen. Thanks so much for your podcast. I learned so much from it. My question is in regards to carb tolerance testing. Thanks to one of your past episodes, I began doing carb tolerance testing. The majority of foods so far, except oatmeal and rice, have come back surprisingly normal. Does this mean I can eat these foods without worrying about them causing weight gain? My okay foods so far are sweet potato, many different fruits, regular potato, quinoa, black beans, carrots, and sourdough bread. You lucky girl. I have about 20 more pounds to lose that I believe to be from hormone imbalance. So I don't want to eat these if it will still cause weight gain. Okay, JJ, great question. So carb tolerance testing, for those of you that don't know what it is a way to test how your body is responding to certain carbohydrates. Because interesting enough, we all will respond differently. So some people, for instance, can get away with eating the rice and the oatmeal and not have their blood sugar spike, while the next person can't eat that, but let's say they can eat fruit and not have their blood sugar spike. So everybody's going to have quite a variation as to what carbs work for them. And it doesn't mean that, somebody's insulin resistance, sure, probably majority of carbs are going to spike blood sugar too much. But this is really an amazing way to really dial in your perfect diet, because there's going to be carbs that you can absolutely tolerate in comparison to others. So you can, in order to do this, you get up, you take your fasting blood glucose, you eat 50 grams of carbs from one kind of carb. You do not mix food items. 2 hours after your meal, you test your blood glucose response. Ideally, you want it between 90 and 115. If it is higher, this is an indication that it raised your blood glucose too high, and it is not a good food for your body at this time. Now, you can retest, as your body heals and maybe you lose some weight, you could easily retest and find that same food is now tolerable. You may find that no matter how healthy you get, you can never eat that food. Not never, but those foods are the ones that cause you more problems and more weight gain. Now, this is the thing. Just because it didn't spike your blood glucose, it still is, every time you eat, insulin is secreted in order to shuttle the blood glucose into the cells. When there is sugar in your system, when there's insulin in your system, your body then will not go to your fat stores to burn, because your body will always prefer glucose as a source of fuel compared to fat. So no matter what, it can, if you're overdoing it, can stop you from losing weight. What this means, JJ, is those are definitely the carbs that you'll want to eat when you are eating a higher carb day. You'll still want to do some time restricted eating, so doing some intermittent fasting throughout the week to give your body a chance to burn your fat stores and get rid of that last 20 pounds that you have to shed. But you're going to want to, drop that insulin down, drop the blood sugar down so that your body can obviously access those fat stores. I personally don't think eating beans and quinoa and the sourdough bread are great staples in the diet. But that said, having them, once a week, or, a piece of sourdough bread on the weekend should be totally fine. And as long as you're mixing that up with your low carb days, your fasting days, to have that metabolic flexibility going back and forth. But it definitely, don't eat the oatmeal and the rice. People think that oatmeal is like the end all be all of health food, and it really isn't. I mean, if I eat oatmeal and rice, same thing. My blood sugar goes through the roof. I can eat potatoes till the cows come home and my blood sugar won't do anything. Well, very little anyways. It doesn't cause me to gain weight, but oatmeal can absolutely affect you. It is still a carb and it's still high in sugar. So if you don't do well with it, then stay away. Things like quinoa and black beans, if you've got hormone imbalance, then those are foods that can cause irritation to the gut, which we want to always have a very healthy gut when it comes to trying to balance our hormones and lose the weight. So those ones I would keep to a minimum. The things like the fruits, the potato, the sweet potato, absolutely, those are your go-to carb ups when you're eating the carbs. Just don't overdo it, or you still won't lose weight. All right. Our next question is from Rebecca. I am very interested in the concept of diet variation and becoming metabolically flexible. Intuitively, it makes sense to me that as humans, we need all of the macronutrients and at different levels throughout the weeks, months, and year. I have personally been keto now for 2 years, and I have lost over 40 pounds. I still have about 15 pounds to lose, but haven't been able to budge my weight for the last year. I'm scared that I've damaged my metabolism, but I am also scared to put carbs back in fear of gaining weight. How would you recommend a person starts doing this after they have been in ketosis for so long? So a great question, Rebecca, and I think a lot of women can relate to this, because let me tell you, it is extremely common. I recently ran a ketogenic challenge in my women's group coaching program, and the members had huge success with it. They lost lots of weight. It was a 4-week little challenge. It was super low carb, and then we did a fasting mimicking diet at the end and during the last week. So 4 weeks of low carb, ketosis, and great results. So a number of women said, well, can I stick with the ketogenic diet or, alternate doing the, I usually every week they get the hormone and metabolic reboot meal plan, which is a carb cycling plan, for very much so on purpose. It's called the hormone metabolic reboot plan. So they were asking, could we, alternate back and forth? And this is the thing is, most women that are on a ketogenic style diet in the beginning lose a good chunk of weight. Not everybody. If you've got some major weight loss resistance going on, you won't even lose it going keto. But for a lot of women, it is this, magic diet that suddenly you can finally lose the weight and you don't feel like you're starving, because the foods that you're eating on a ketogenic diet really stamp out hunger. So it brings the hunger levels down. It's hard to overeat on the foods that you are eating. I always say it's hard to, ask for, you don't really want to eat a second steak, if it was so tasty, bring on the steak, bring on more butter. In most cases, you don't do that. I'm sure some people do, but in most cases, you don't say, oh my gosh, that steak was so good, bring me a second. Unlike something like pasta that spikes your blood sugar really high and creates a need to overeat, which so you can easily, ask for that second helping of lasagna or whatever it is, the carbs that you're eating. So in the beginning, it works great. It puts your body into a natural caloric deficit without starvation, and it feels awesome. You can access your fat stores and you can burn up a lot of fat. But I will tell you right now, most women I talk to that have followed a ketogenic diet for a long time, and I've talked about this a lot on this podcast, so I'm sure and on other podcasts, it always plateaus. And the reason behind this is because ketosis is a secondary source of fuel. It was a backup so that when we were in starvation or going through a hard winter as a hunter-gatherer, our body could then access our fat stores and not die. But our bodies preferred glucose. So over a period of time, if your body's not getting that and you're running on ketones, your body starts to see it as, okay, we're starving. There's not a lot of food around. We've been burning ketones for a long period of time without any glucose coming in, and it can downregulate your metabolism. Now, this isn't everybody. Before a lot of people get angry, I've done so good on ketosis, and that's great, awesome. But majority of people I speak to, they plateau, hard plateau. And no matter how much lower they go or how much more fasting they go, they can't seem to move past that. So when it comes to trying to get the carbs back in after a long period of time, like Rebecca's been doing ketosis for, then you're going to want to be very careful with adding the carbs back in, because you're going to you will have become carb intolerant, which means your body's just going to be overly sensitive to eating carbohydrates because it's been in survival mode, in protection mode for a long time, that when it gets those carbs in finally, the weight can spike because your body's going, okay, there's sugar coming in. Quick, put the fat on the body, hold on to it, because who knows when this next famine, starvation is going to come around. The stressor of getting and staying in ketosis, because it is a stressor, so is fasting. So ideally, what she should have done was got her body into ketosis for a couple months, got to the point that she was burning ketones, and then started, doing something like the carb tolerance testing to find out, okay, where's my carb tolerance at, and how easily can I move in and out of ketosis? And you basically can go from there, and each person will be different. Some person might be able to handle 1 or 2 days of high carbs. Some people can do less. It's really individual. Some people that are really active, for instance, can do a lot more. Maybe they'll do 3 or 4 or higher carb type days, or carb dinners, carb heavy dinners. So each person will be, have to find their perfect little sweet spot. So, but when it comes to right now, Rebecca needs to go very, very slowly. Do the carb tolerance testing, absolutely. I would also be testing just fasting blood glucose in the mornings to see where that's at. Especially once you start to add carbs back in, does it spike it? How does your body handle it? Take your basal body temperature. This is a really good way to see where is your metabolic rate right now. Has it gone down from eating too low carb, which is extremely common? So taking your basal body temperature and paying attention, doing it a couple of times a month and tracking it to see, okay, eating carbs, the days I eat carbs, I notice my metabolic rate goes up. My body temperature will go up. So that tells you that your body does better, maybe on a little bit more carb. So it's really, once again, like some people will find that when they fast, their basal body temperature drops. This is maybe a sign that that's not a good fit for you at this time. You might have a thyroid problem, you could have an adrenal issue, and that fasting is putting a stressor on things. So I would do that first, Rebecca, like just see where you're at, see where your metabolism is at. Start doing some carb tolerance testing to see maybe if there are some safer carbs that you could be adding in right now. So see if the sweet potato, do the fruit, like stick within the paleo paradigm, and sticking with carrots, beets, fruits, those higher carb foods, sweet potato. Try those first. See if there's ones that are better than others that don't spike blood glucose. If they're all good, then you just want to start adding them in at dinner time, for instance, maybe every other night. See how that goes. If your body's not gaining weight, then you can continue to eat that way, where you're just alternating the days, or you can do it a couple days a week. The HMR plan in my program, we usually do 1 or 2 high carb days. Once in a while, we'll do carb dinners. So you can decide whatever's easiest for you. I just find that most women find it's easier to do higher carb days on the weekends, right? Gives them a little bit more flexibility. And so that seems to work, but if that doesn't work for you, you can switch. You can do it on higher cardio days for, when you're working out. That day could be your higher carb days is when you do higher cardio. So go very slowly, Rebecca, slowly add things back in. Like I said, this is extremely normal. Some people will really pack it on quick if they jump into it too fast. So be very careful and just go slow and you should be okay. And then you'll want to get to that point. The ideal place to be at is to be able to get in and out of ketosis easily. And so that your body can still lose weight. You can do some fasting days to access your fat stores, and then you can move out of it, have higher carb days, and have that metabolic flexibility. Okay, the last question I am going to read is from Ange. Hi, Karen. Thanks for your podcast. Thoroughly enjoy them. My question, I'm on T3 only medication and just found out I have a low cortisol from morning to night, hence still hypothyroid. Is Adrenal Cortex, I use Thorne brand, safe? Will my adrenals begin to rely on these? I have no idea if I should gradually taper now after 1 month of using 5 capsules a day. So, and first of all, I would like to tell you about the circadian T3 method to raise cortisol. If you haven't heard of this, if you go to last year's Advanced Thyroid series that I did on this podcast, you can find an interview that I did with Paul Robinson. He wrote a couple of different thyroid books, one called The Circadian T3 Method. He's also written one of the only books, I think the only book, on reverse T3, as well, one called The Thyroid Patient's Handbook, I do believe. All 3 are great. I own all of them. I personally worked with Paul. He's fantastic. He's got so much great information. But basically, he discovered that there is a relationship between T3, your hormones T3, and cortisol. that T3 also has a circadian rhythm, that it comes on in the early morning hours before you get up, and it kicks on cortisol. So it helps to raise cortisol levels. So for many people, usually like 80 to 90% of people that use the circadian T3 method, it actually works to help raise definitely their morning cortisol level. And for many, all cortisol throughout the day can help raise up. Now, basically you set like an alarm for like 3 o'clock in the morning, a couple hours before you would normally get out of bed. And you take your T3 medication, then go back to bed, and it helps to kick on the cortisol. So I would definitely try that. It works so well. I used it personally, and I've used it with many clients now since, and it usually always works. So definitely something that you'll want to check out. You can check him out as well. He's got a great website, Facebook page, and that's Paul Robinson. Okay, so there are two things that can help somebody that's got really low, I mean, not just two things, but this is what we're talking about today, that can help somebody to raise and basically help heal the adrenal system when there's low cortisol levels. So there's something called Cortef, which is a prescription hydrocortisone steroid. And so this is serious. When you take Cortef, which is like basically taking straight cortisol, you are replacing and shutting down your own cortisol levels when you take it. And this is for people that are in like these are serious adrenal fatigue, adrenal insufficiency. Fatigue's the wrong word, but adrenal insufficiency, where you have really, really low, below range, all 4 cortisol points of the day are below range, very low. You may need to consider Cortef when it's like that. Now, adrenal cortex is different, but oftentimes is related to it. But you see, Cortef is like the straight up hormone, steroid hormone, while adrenal cortex is from bovine cow, adrenal cortex tissue. The adrenal cortex is responsible for producing cortisol. There's also something called the adrenal medulla, which is the center of the adrenal glands, which is a different part of the adrenal gland that produces cortisol and adrenaline. Now, when you have the medulla, for many people, if they take a supplement that has that in it, it will cause heart palpitations because it can stimulate the adrenaline. And we don't want that because people with low cortisol are oftentimes already running on adrenaline because their cortisol is so low. So you don't want to take the medulla, you want to take the cortex. Now, glandulars are not the same as using Cortef. The gland of the animal will be reasonably close in its nutritional composition to that of a human being and contains most of the necessary nutrients for healthy glandular function. Animal glandulars are very dense and rich in nutrients, including vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, polypeptides, enzymes, and many other important nutritional factors for the health of your body. Glandular therapy can supply these essential nutrients and needs in a highly effective manner. They do not contain hormones. Traditionally, glandular preparations did contain trace amounts of active hormones, but this is now regulated by health and safety bodies such as Health Canada. In order to be licensed as a natural health product, adrenal glandulars must be free from adrenal hormones. The adrenal glandulars are useful because they contain all of those amazing precursors and peptides required to stimulate adrenal function of the glands. As well, it is believed that they have an organ-sparing effect. Many experts have long held the belief that glandular medicines exert a tissue-sparing effect on a person's bodily tissues. This mechanism is by way of either neutralizing the autoantibody attack on specific organ cells or by way of supplying the right kinds of nutrients and enzymes that allow the corresponding organ to rest up. Some examples are as follows. Researchers revealed that pancreatic enzymes are reabsorbed in the lower bowel and returned back to the pancreas and stored for future use. It has been shown through research that giving a patient a pancreatic glandular not only benefits the patient's digestion and assimilation, but also increases the pancreatic reserves. Hans Selye in 1976 also remarked on the importance. Hans Selye, for those that don't know, is like the thyroid guy. Was the thyroid guy. He's dead now, but he wrote a great book on thyroid health. And so he remarked on the importance of sparing the adrenal glands when a person is in the adrenally compromised state. Research in the 1950s discovered that adrenal extracts contain enzymes that assist in the conversion of cholesterol to various glucocorticosteroids, as well as their precursors. Okay, now that was a big mouthful, I know. Basically, in really simple terms, taking the adrenal cortex gives your adrenal system a chance to rest. And it gives you the nutrients, the enzymes, everything that the body needs basically to help make cortisol. So this is super key. So to answer your question, Ange, it is very safe to take the adrenal cortex. I use it all the time for patients, for clients that have low cortisol, especially clients with hypothyroidism that have low cortisol. I have not found anything that works as well as adrenal cortex. Now, 5 caps is actually a low dose. I oftentimes start women off at 10 caps a day. So 5 caps is pretty low. So you definitely don't have to worry there, but you also will want to test how much you need by taking your basal body temps. What you're looking for is, and you should be taking your temperature anyways if you're hypothyroid, but you want to see that there is little to no fluctuation. So no more than 0.2 of a degree throughout the day. So you'll take your morning, you'll take maybe another one in the afternoon, maybe at lunchtime, and then again in the later afternoon. And you want to see that your temperature is steady and that it's not bouncing around. It's normal for it to come up from your morning, like before getting out of bed will be a little bit lower, but some people will go from like 0.5 or even 1 degree, like there can be a real difference in their temperature. And in which case, if it's bouncing around like that, then you know that you likely need more, but it could also mean that you need less. So you have to play around with that, but you're really looking for steady energy. You're looking for that you can take your thyroid medication and it actually works, that your metabolic rate comes up. If it doesn't, then like I said, you can add to that, and you want to add doses throughout the day to mimic the circadian rhythm of cortisol. So, you take the most when you get up in the morning, and then you start to taper down as the day goes on. If you're taking too much, you're likely going to know because you're not going to feel good. You'll have heart palpitations. Sometimes you can shake and you just don't feel well. It can make you feel nauseous. And in which case, then back down. Now you say you've only been on it for a month. Well, it can take years to repair the adrenal system. And what's key here is to really figure out, why do you have low cortisol? Now, being undiagnosed with hypothyroidism for a long period of time, being on the wrong medication, so if you're on T4 only medication, if you've got a high reverse T3, these are all things that can cause a low adrenal function. So just putting in some thyroid medication and some adrenal cortex could be all a person needs to fix the problem, to feel better and to have a normal metabolic rate and take you out of that hypothyroid state. But for others, taking the adrenal cortex and taking the thyroid hormone is still not enough. And what will happen is you'll go to come off of those adrenal supplements, and it could be 6 months, it could be a year, and you go to come off the adrenal supplements and you feel like you've taken care of your lifestyle stressors and that you're not that stressed out of a person, and yet you still have low cortisol, it means you haven't got to the root of the problem. So that I really want to emphasize this as being very, very important. As why do you have low cortisol? Is it just because you were undiagnosed with hypothyroidism for so long? Or is there something else causing it? This can be any kind of an infection, whether it's heavy metals, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, parasites, can all cause a low adrenal function. And of course, stress, low progesterone, high estrogen, there's different things that can create problems with your cortisol. So you really want to get to the root of the problem while you're healing the adrenals and while you're letting them rest by taking that adrenal cortex. So all of that said, and you still will want to taper off slowly. 1 month is not going to be long enough. I would say 3 months minimum. And then start taking one cap away and slowly coming off of it. Because if you're giving your body those nutrients and you're giving the adrenal system a so-called break, just suddenly removing the stuff that was supporting it won't make you feel good if you still have low cortisol issues. Okay, because very likely you could. I know I had that. It couldn't work for me because I personally had heavy metal toxicity. So I've had to get to the bottom of that in order to fix the cortisol problem. So you want to be very careful coming off of it. Some people need to stay on it for years while they do their heavy metal chelation just to support their adrenal system, because it's so hard on the adrenals to do heavy metal chelation. So all of these things need to be factored in. But no, you don't. There are no hormones in it, so you don't have to worry. And if you've got high cortisol, I wouldn't be taking. Some people say to still take adrenal cortex. I disagree. I do think that it gives people energy, and most of the time, you don't need more of that when you've got high cortisol levels. So you want to work on taking things that will relax you and bring down that cortisol rather than bumping it up. Okay, so I hope that helps, but I'm a big fan of the adrenal cortex. So stay tuned next week, you guys, for the amazing and so lovable interview that I did with my amazing, lovable interview, the lovable Susan Bratton that I interviewed, and is one of like the top sexperts in the business. We talk all things sex, especially how to keep the drive alive as you age. Everything from hormone therapy to different supplements that you can take, and so much more. She schooled me quite a bit in this conversation, and she's just super lovely and just great energy, and you'll laugh, and everybody will have a takeaway from it because it's so awesome. So be sure to tune in to that one next week. And so once again, if you have any questions for our next Q&A, you can head over to KarenMartel.com/podcast. All right, that's it for today. Enjoy your day wherever you are in the world, and we will talk to you next time. I hope you enjoyed today's show. New episodes come out every Thursday, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of them. You can also find me at KarenMartel.com, and you can get free recipes and weight loss tips by following me on Instagram and Facebook at Karen Martel Nutrition.